Today we'll be talking about course development. What are the kinds of things that one needs to talk about, to plan, to think about before actually deciding upon what course needs to be launched, how the entire course is coordinated, what are the different factors that go into making it a good course, and then what are the issues that are associated with the revision of a course once it has been launched and has been on offer for a while. So talking to us about all these issues in detail is Professor Ramanujam from STRIDE, IGNOU. Welcome, Professor Ramanujam.
Thank you.
I just said that we need to talk about course development, and it's not as easy as it sounds. You just don't think of one topic and say, okay, I'm going to offer a course on this particular topic. So there are so many things that go into it before one actually sees it in print. So if you could just talk about what is it that one needs to think about before we even start thinking about a course.
Well, if you were a classroom teacher, you would know that everything has already been planned, and you have to go to the class with a textbook possibly, or as it happens in many cases, you will have your own notes which you may be using year after year, and of course you in all probability may be updating your notes, and you talk to the students, explain the textbook. But in the case of open distance learning, the course materials, written course materials, they constitute the core of teaching learning. And teaching in this setting actually means teaching through materials. And materials have to be written by the distance teachers. This we do after looking at the need for a particular program.
So how do we do that? Is there a survey that is conducted?
Usually it is conducted by a specialist unit. In the case of IGNOU, for many years, the planning division used to conduct needs analysis, and even before the planning division came into existence, the distance education division at that time, which later became STRIDE, we used to conduct the needs analysis at least for the first few programs.
So could you just tell me how actually it works? Now supposing I want to offer a new course, so do I send it to this particular unit and say that I want to, I'm interested in offering this, and then they go on to conduct a survey? So how do they do it? Do they send out a questionnaire? What exactly happens?
Well, it can, the origin of a course or a program can come from anywhere. You are in a particular academic discipline, you would know by making an intelligent guess whether a new course which you have been thinking about will have takers, and then you propose. Sometimes some external body may propose, the government may propose, the ministry may propose that we need to have this kind of thing based on what they felt as the needed course, need based. And then we ask that particular unit to conduct a survey with that format, and they will circulate that format maybe among the would-be takers, would-be students, or the stakeholders, or the institutions, and they would give the feedback. If you launch this particular program or a course, definitely this will be the number initially, and maybe for the next 5 years, how it would grow, and after 5 years you can review and then take a decision whether to continue with that program or to withdraw or to modify. So that's a very routine, simple thing to do, and the origin of the idea can come from anywhere.
We keep talking about programs and courses. So I think it's a little confusing for someone who is not part of this system.
I think,
what exactly a program is and what a course is.
In the normal parlance, when we say BA course in Delhi University, and in any Indian university, and the course will have X number of papers at different levels. If it is a BA course, first year maybe 5 courses, second year another 5, third year another 5. If it is MA, then usually you have MA course and
various
10 papers. Now, if you look for a rough equivalent, a course becomes a program and a paper becomes a course. This nomenclature is necessary because we have the modular approach. A program consists of certain number of courses and the course consists of certain number of blocks. Blocks will consist of certain number of units, lessons, and units will have certain number of sections. It goes on and on. The idea is, if you have a modular approach, one course from your program, say MA in English, that particular course can be added to some other program where you don't have an MA program but some other program in communications, and it can be used
if it is relevant.
And that is the facility with the modular approach. And to keep in the to keep the tradition of a modular approach, then we use these terminologies. So program is the superordinate, and program you will have X number of courses, under courses X number of blocks, etc., etc. And within IGNOU programs also there will be variations. A particular program may have 4 courses, another may have 5 courses, and each course may have 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, depending on the academic decision taken by the faculty, by the school board, by the academic council. These numbers will be decided, and that's why we use this. Roughly you can say a paper is equal to a course.
To a course.
And the conventional course is a program.
Well, with my own experience of dealing with course writers, I know that there are always questions and a little bit of confusion about the course objectives. That is one thing that we have right in the beginning.
Right.
And they are a little confused about aims and objectives, and they say, are they the same? Is there a very fine difference between the two? So how do you distinguish?
Well, they are interrelated, but generally aims are the outcomes that we expect from the school, from the faculty, from the teacher. The objectives are the targets that we set for the students to achieve. In other words, if you ask a simple question, what the student should be able to do after going through a particular course, and if you get the answer, clear answer, then you get the objective of the program. Suppose I expect the students to appreciate a piece of art or piece of literature. That is my aim. But if I say that after going through this particular course on Shakespeare, they would be able to interpret, write about, or debate X number of issues related to that particular play in Shakespeare, there you have objectives. So aims from the point of view of the teacher or the institution, objectives from the point of view of the students.
It becomes more specific.
More specific, yes.
Because it is related to a particular target that you're talking about.
Even, of course, we can go on splitting. Even within objectives, you have general objectives, specific objectives, depending on the context.
When we start off with a course, we need to have a particular approach in mind. So are there many different approaches? Is there just one that we need to follow?
Well, it depends on the kind of resources that we have, both human or intellectual or financial, and also the time that we have. At least you can think of 3-4 approaches. When the British Open University started the course development in their university, they went for a course team approach. Ideally, a course team will have the course coordinator or the owner of the course, experts in that particular field who are all academics, teachers. Then you have a media person, you would have a line manager, and it goes on and on. In some cases, there would be more than 40 members in a course team. And that is the model given by the UKOU. And they say the quality of their materials is assured because they have course team approach. They take inputs from different members, consider them, and then take a rational decision. That's good, but then whether every institution will have that kind of facility or luxury to have 20 members, 50 members, 40 members to work on a particular course or a few courses, that is debatable because it's very expensive, very time consuming, and at times, depending on the culture, the course teams may go on debating, discussing and quarreling, and at the end of the day, you may not agree on anything. But if there is a team culture, cooperative culture, course teams work wonderfully well, as it has worked in the case of UKOU. And there are other models, author or writer, editor model. You are the writer and there is an editor who knows what are the requirements of the learners in that particular institution. And you have a briefing, you have a dialogue, continuous dialogue maybe, and the writer writes. The editor goes through that and then makes necessary changes in consultation with the writer. This is author-editor model. And then in IGNOU, we have different models. Maybe across the disciplines, across the schools, each one may be following a slightly different approach. So you have a list of course writers, and the course writers will have to be approved by the university, and then you decide how many units will be written by
each one.
Some course writer may write one full block with 4 or 5 units. And in that case, the job of the course coordinator or the owner of the course or the editor will be easier because there will be less overlapping, and the person who writes a block can give a sense of completion. But it doesn't happen always. So first unit may be written by writer X, second unit by writer Y, third by Z, and so on. Ultimately, sometimes when you read all the 4 units, maybe 50% of the total written content will have to be discarded because what is said in block unit 1 may be repeated in some way in unit 2, and the same may be repeated in unit 3 and 4. Now this is a very terrific job. Either the editor, content editor, will have to take a decision which one to keep and which one to discard, in that case how to fill the gap and all this. And it goes through, in this approach, the course coordinator will have to subject the materials to certain processes, like getting the materials vetted by the content editor and then edited by the language editor, which we'll talk about later on. And then seeing the format, or what you call the instructional design, etc.
Which brings me
and
to
then
my
there is
next
one more.
Yes.
Franchising or consortium. Suppose you pull out materials from different institutions. You have an agreement with them and you design the course where you can have materials borrowed from or bought from
and you put
various
them all together.
institutions and put them together. They are also called wraparound courses. Or you can buy the books, textbooks, and then you write some kind of commentary, teaching notes, and that's also possible. So there are different methods, but usually the course team approach, the writer-editor approach, and the course coordinator, experts, and course writers approach, they normally work very well in open universities.
From what you say, it's apparent that the course coordinator is the main fulcrum around which everything revolves. So if the course coordinator does not have a conceptually clear approach or is not strong enough to keep them all together, I think the entire course would just fall apart. So what would you say are the role and the responsibilities of the course coordinator?
Well, the course coordinator's role is pivotal, vital. If you are a course coordinator, you conceive the idea of bringing out or developing a course. In that sense, you are the owner. You are the mother or the father of that particular course. And then you work around that key idea, then send it to the various approving bodies, statutory bodies. In the case of IGNOU, it will be first accepted within the discipline. Then it goes to possibly the school council,
the school board,
and then the school board, and the school board's recommendations or approvals will be placed before the academic program committee, and from there it goes to the academic council. In between you have various phases, phase forms, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 4 is the final when the course material is ready. Now that will justify the development of that particular course, whether there are takers. As we talked about the needs analysis, you should know whether this much of effort is worth. Suppose you develop a course over a period of 3 years and 4 years, and when you launch it and you find that hardly you get 10 people or even single digit enrollment, whether that is viable. So that becomes an issue. So viability and sustainability, this will tell us whether to have this course or not. That is the responsibility of the course coordinator. And the course coordinator will also have the choice or the freedom to select the experts. The experts would tell what should go into that particular course. And then you select the writers. Some of the experts themselves may become writers, and you will have others as writers. Then the course coordinator will have to work out the budget for it. Of course, initially the budget would have been decided, and then you decide the schedule, you interact with the course writers, get the drafts at various stages, draft 1, draft 2, draft 3. I don't know what actually happens in practice. Sometimes draft 1 may become the final draft, which will be telling upon its quality. But usually it should go through at least 3 phases. Draft 1 will have to be reworked, and then draft 2 will have to be again looked at, commented upon. If necessary, you give it to more experienced colleagues who will be the editors, maybe external editors, or within the faculty if you have very competent senior academics, ask them to go through that and offer their comments. And at the stage of the third draft, it may become final. And then you have to take care of various other activities like processing them, getting the materials formatted from the instructional design point of view, looking at the language, if necessary, get it edited by the language editor, and then liaise with the printing unit, publishing unit, and then decide on the house style. So many issues will have to be looked at by the course coordinator.
You have to design the cover of each blog.
The cover design, the color, the code, everything in association with the planning division and so many other divisions. Then you should also stick to the overall schedule, when the course will be ready and at what time you have to issue the advertisement. And when the applications come in, you have to liaise with the admission unit, admission division. And it goes on and on and on. So in that respect, I think the course coordinator is the real owner of the course. And it goes with other academic responsibilities. Unless you have a clear understanding of the course, you should not become a course coordinator. And it is not like doing the job of a postman. That will be, I think, a very, very low status. Anybody can do that. But a course coordinator will be the intellectual owner of the course. The contents should be known thoroughly, even if they are written by others. And then you have to prepare the assignments. You have to evaluate the assignments, monitor the assignments, set the question papers, and you have to take part in moderation, then take part in evaluation at the final examination. Then you see the results, performance of the course, whether it is performing well or not. All these, I think, are the responsibilities of the course coordinator.
When you say that the course coordinator is the owner of the course, it also naturally follows from that the course coordinator is also accountable for what is in the course.
Of course.
So how do you decide what goes into the course?
If you are fairly familiar, even if you are a young academic, you will take the advice from your senior colleagues, academics, and then get into the materials. You must go through the materials in the first place. And you, course coordinator, also should write a few units. Without writing the units, you cannot get into the subject.
Yes.
Because then it becomes a liaison job,
right,
not an academic job.
Right.
And then you have to keep feedback files. Ideally, it will be good to design a feedback sheet and put it in each booklet, which we call block, and wait for the responses of the learners from the academic counselors or even from the public, from the fellow colleagues, your peer group, and you analyze them maybe at the end of the year or end of the semester, and then see whether points which you have to revisit, review, and then go for revision. All these things will have to be done. Then only I think you will be the real owner of the course. Owning the course means owning the responsibility. Suppose something goes wrong with the content, inadvertently, I'll talk about it maybe in a different context, but suppose there is a remark about a particular community or a particular section of the people, and that gets noticed. The writer may be somebody else. The course coordinator might not be the writer. And then this has to be taken up at the appropriate level and go for amendment. Otherwise, the sensitivity, if it is lost, then you will have to face a lot of political challenges, political issues. Then the faculty meeting will become a parliamentary debate.
What happens if something controversial like this does inadvertently crop up? I mean, if the course coordinator has neglected to see that this was there in the material, and if there's a court case of some kind, what exactly happens?
I think it may be, some oversight on the part of the writer. May not be intentional, and the coordinator.
Yes.
But when somebody finds out, then we should not become unnecessarily defensive. We must immediately give it to a third party, an external expert. Ask the expert to give his or her opinion, or you set up a committee if the issue is so serious, and then abide by the recommendation of the committee. There, I think that's the safest solution. Negligence may be one part, and unintentional remark may be another. When an issue becomes a big political issue or social issue, I think then the course coordinator, the course writer, course editor, all those who are involved in the development of the course should get educated. Because it's a public property.
Yes.
It's a public document. Anybody can see and
Yes.
then comment on that. And we are answerable. The course coordinator is primarily answerable. The program coordinator is answerable. The director is answerable. Ultimately, the institutional head is answerable. And then where they will zero in on the course coordinator.
Yes.
So you cannot simply say, no, it was done by the course writer who is not in the country or who is no more. And therefore I am not responsible. We can't take
say that. Yes.
Yeah, we have to be sensitive.
Let us very quickly look at issues that relate to revision of courses.
I think the institutions must have a policy. After how many years one should revise?
I think we do have something like that.
I don't think we have any written policy.
Every 10 years, I think.
No, every 5 years.
5 years.
This is only by hearsay.
Okay.
But I am yet to see a document which is absolutely necessary. And the document should be part of the policy towards course development and revision.
Tell me one thing. I know other universities where you have classroom teaching, where the syllabus hasn't changed for decades. You have the same writers, you have the same texts.
Yes.
You have absolutely the same things that goes on and on and on. So why is it so important to revise your course materials?
Very simple. If you are a classroom teacher, at least, I mean, it is expected that the teacher would consult the journals, the new books, update his or her knowledge. And even if the textbook is 15 years old, it doesn't really matter. You can take what is really relevant and then update the knowledge.
You give new perspectives.
You can give new perspectives. But in the case of certain subjects, you don't really need latest textbooks. For example, literary criticism or teaching of poetry, romantic poetry or something. There you bring in the text and the later developments in interpreting them in the critical field, and then you update them. But in the case of distance open learning, you have to revise because things go on changing and you don't have a live teacher in front of you, or you have to send supplemental communication from time to time. But in any case, it should not be a difficult thing because you have now technology. You can keep everything in the soft copy, and then I would say every year a course can be revised to some degree, particularly updating of the information.
But then do you need to go through the same process, have an expert's
Well, it depends on what kind of revision. If it is a minor revision, just changing a few sentences here and there, updating some facts, figures, you don't need to go for that kind of thing. The course coordinator can suggest and get the necessary approval and go ahead. If it is a major revision, then you have to go through that
entire process again.
Yes. Experts will have to comment on that, and then you have to take it to the academic council, etc., etc. Otherwise, I think minor revisions can be done as a matter of routine. And that shows the concern and also the responsibility of the course coordinator. And to that extent, I think the course coordinator will have to be alive throughout the course life.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Ramanujam. And I think this has been a very illuminating discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.